This is the all-new 2025 Toyota Sienna. And dude, I don't know if you've heard or not, but minivans are back. And this is the coolest minivan that you can buy. I'm gonna take you through all the features today of this thing and tell you exactly why this is the coolest minivan on the market today. So grab a coffee, stick around, and let's get into it. That's right, I said cool. Because any guy can look cool driving a Porsche, but it takes a really cool guy to look cool driving a minivan. And if you're gonna do it, this is the minivan to do it in. And that's because this thing actually looks good. I've seen these with roof racks on them, on their way to the mountain, all-wheel drive, plowing through snow with the whole family in the back. There's nothing cooler than that. So if you're one of these people that's on the fence about buying a minivan just because you're worried about buying a minivan, don't let that stop you. I think minivans are pretty cool. There's nothing more cool than being relaxed and functional and having a utility vehicle to have fun with your family in. So with that, let's jump into the Toyota Sienna review here, and I'll tell you what I think of this thing. All right, so I'm gonna kick things off with the exterior here because I think this is the area where the 2025 Toyota Sienna really shines compared to other minivans on the market. In my personal opinion, this is by far the best looking minivan on the market. So much so that I saw it when I was in Colorado with a Yakima roof rack on top at one of the restaurants that we were at up in the mountains. And I actually stopped to look at this thing in the parking lot. And that's one of those things that I've just never really experienced with any other minivan out there. It comes in this really cool cement color, which is called cement. You got full on LED headlights and fog lights up here, which is pretty cool in a minivan. I like that a lot. It's got very aggressive exterior styling and body lines. You have these really interesting, alloy wheels here that I really do like. They have a little bit of a textured pattern on them, but they look very sporty for a minivan, and they're wrapped in 235, so, not too bad. You have gloss black accents on the door handles here, gloss black mirrors as you come back. You have one touch open on the door, which is very cool. Most minivans do that, but I still find it to be pretty cool. And then coming around the rear here, you have really sharp exterior tail lights that really do stand out in this trim, and everything's highlighted in this gloss black that gives it a very sporty feel. So that's something that you notice with the Toyota Sienna. The exterior is very sporty and aggressive for a minivan, and I personally think that it's a really, really good looking minivan. So you'll see walking up to the rear here, like I said, the exterior styling is very, very cool. You can see the lights at night. They look really good. I mean, it's a good looking minivan, but it also has cool features in the back. So you're walking up with groceries with your kids, and you swipe your foot, and it automatically opens up. Now, I know this is not a super new feature in vehicles, but I do still really appreciate it, so note that. This is only the XSE trim. This is not even the top platinum trim, so just know that. In the rear, you'll see that you have a ton of storage down here, which is really, really good. I'll get some close-ups of that for you, but really, really good bin storage back here. And then both of these seats are one hand fold down and up. So you can grab this handle here, fold them down like that. They're designed to be one hand fold down, and they go completely flat. And then you can stick and flat lay things in the back, which is very, very cool. And they both do that, and then it's one hand up as well. So very, very functional in the rear. In the rear, you also have a lot of different power adapters back here. You have your regular 120 volt back here, 1500 watt 120 volt outlet. You also have USB-Cs for your passengers in the rear. And there's just a ton of space in here. We're gonna go in the interior in a second, but that is the tailgate. All right, jumping into the interior of the 2025 Sienna here is a really nice experience overall. Overall, I've really enjoyed living with this thing. It's been comfortable on a day-to-day basis. I have a few things that I can nitpick in here that we'll go through, but overall, I've really enjoyed driving the Toyota Sienna. The interior is laid out in a very thoughtful way. You can tell the engineers designed this in a very functional way. There's a lot of like flat shelf type surfaces in here for phones and other items if you're going on road trips. You have a wireless charger up here that has nubs on it that can keep your phone stable. You have a 12-point-something inch infotainment here, which is plenty big, and it's designed with the new Toyota infotainment system, which I have grown to actually really like. It works really well. Wireless CarPlay and Android Auto on there. The climate control looks very good. There's physical buttons in the middle for most of the climate control, front and rear zone climate control. You have overhead HVAC vents in the back for your rear occupants, which is super, super beneficial to anybody sitting in the back on a hot day. in Georgia, for example. The entire center console is very raised up. So that's something I saw the Toyota engineers talk about. It's very raised up and wraps around the driver kind of like a cockpit, because previous minivans, the consumer reported that the dash was a little bit far away and it kind of felt like you were driving a school bus. This doesn't feel like that. This feels almost like you're driving a Grand Highlander or some kind of nice SUV. The interior is very thoughtfully designed. There is a lot of gloss black in here. I'm not a huge fan of the gloss black. They kind of used gloss black and made it look like wood grain, which is interesting. I haven't seen that done before. Maybe it'll stay a little bit cleaner, but I can tell it does get a little bit dirty, and that's the big complaint with gloss black, is it gets really dirty. It's not, they do it to kind of raise the luxury level of a vehicle, but in turn it gets dirty and doesn't look good all the time. So that's one thing that I will nitpick. The price of this vehicle is $50,000, and at this $50,000 price point, I think the interior is pretty adequate for what you're getting. There's a massive storage in the center console, is just massively huge. There's multiple cup holders here, and in the cup holders, there's places to slot your phone, which I think are very cool and thoughtful. I really appreciate stuff like that. So when I'm driving, I have somewhere to prop my phone, doesn't fly around. That's hard to find sometimes in cars, believe it or not. You also have buttons to automatically open the rear doors. So one button will open the left and the right door. The windows in the rear also come down completely, which is a really nice feature to have. You have a sunroof in here, which is also really nice. You got automatic tailgate open there. So you have all the things that you would expect to have in here. As far as seating goes, it's pretty comfortable. I think it could be a little bit better. I haven't really been able to compare it to some other minivans out there, but it's decent. I haven't had any issues with it. It's just not maybe as plush as that Land Cruiser that I was in, but that's 70 grand. So it's a little bit of a different price point, different vehicle. But other than that, the touch points are pretty nice. It's what you're seeing across the Toyota lineup, similar to my wife's RAV4. And there's tons of space in here, guys. You can fit up to 8 occupants in some of these. So this is the 7-seater. I have captain's chairs back there, which are really cool. I'll jump in the back and show you those in a second. But if you have the bench seating, I guess they have bench seating or something, there's some way to fit 8 occupants in here in some of the trims. So that's something to note. And other than that, it's been a really nice experience. My only things that I would nitpick in here are minivans have a lot of blind spots. Know that going in. If you're used to SUVs, they have a lot of blind spots. For some reason, they just have big pillars, and I've noticed that in the rear and up here in the front, there's decent blind spots. And I've also noticed the climate control in this has not been that powerful. It's been really cold. It's really cold right now in Georgia. I don't know why. Really sucks. But the climate control has not heated up as quickly as I'd like. I don't know if that's just this minivan or what. This is a hybrid. It's got a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder. I'm not sure what's causing it, but I could have used a little bit more from the climate control. Let's jump into the rear and I'll show you that now. I'll show you just some of the room in this thing. And this is really where the Toyota Sienna shines. You can see here how much space is in this thing. It's incredible. And this is where minivans set themselves apart from SUVs. You have this seat here that we talked about, sliding seat forward and back. Very, very cool. Super easy to use, makes it really easy to get your kids in and out of the car seat, which I will say is the best feature that I've really noted from the Toyota Sienna. This glass comes down in the rear. Not all minivans used to do that. The Toyota Sienna was one of the first to do that. Jumping into the rear captain's chairs, I mean, the space in here is really unmatched. I have so much leg room. I'm sitting behind my wife's seat, and she had it slid pretty far back. I'm about 5'9", and this thing is just like, I have, I don't know, almost a foot of space in front of my knee, which is amazing. The floor is completely flat. You have cup holders back here. You have more 120 volt outlets. You got USB-C. Some of them even have a vacuum and a cool box and a fridge back here in certain trims. You have overhead vents for HVAC, which is great when it's hot out. And then you also have a rear climate control on the roof here, and some of them even come with infotainments up here for, DVDs or whatever you want to play. I guess the kids aren't using DVDs anymore, huh? Oof. Then you got climate control under the rear seats to blow on your feet, which is nice back there. And then coming into the back, you got a bench seat back there that I'm not going to jump into, but there's plenty of room in that bench seat as well, and it's very roomy. So I will say that the rear of the Sienna is just full of space. And that's where folks, I think, they get SUVs for the cool factor. They're worried about getting a minivan. And the reality is that, if you need a lot of space, a good road trip vehicle, you're going to have so much fun taking your family on road trips when everybody's not crammed in the vehicle and you're able to kind of hang out and relax in the car. So let's get it down on the road. I'm going to tell you how it drives. It does drive fairly well. So let's talk about that, and we'll get into it now. All right, well, let's go for a drive in the Toyota Sienna. Let's floor it all the way down. 245 horsepower, coming into a turn. TNGA platform is holding pretty good, pretty solid there. So this minivan, I will say, drives better than some SUVs. I think that's the big takeaway that I have from driving this thing. 245 horsepower hybrid. They claim, I don't think there's a quoted torque number. It's definitely torquey with the battery. It has an EV mode, so you don't always run in full gasoline engine mode, ICE engine mode. When you're taking off low speeds, the battery is on, and then it transitions over to the gas engine, the ICE engine. And that transition in this vehicle, I will say, is one of the smoothest of any hybrid that I've ever experienced. That's one thing that I've also noticed. So it's very good, drives, very, very well, and I think that's because you have a super low center of gravity. And again, I'm saying drives well for a minivan. I mean, obviously it's not, a Porsche 911. It's not handling like a sports car, but it handles better than some SUVs, and maybe my wife's RAV4, honestly. It's very planted, very stable because it's got such a long wheelbase, and it's very comfortable and easy to drive. And this new TNGA platform that it's built on is very rigid, and usually I find it to be too rigid. And in this vehicle, I find that it fits just right. It doesn't feel overly rigid. It feels like it kind of complements the vehicle. So I know they built that architecture to be used across multiple vehicles, and maybe that's why, it is the way it is, because there's some sacrifices for that platform in some of the body-on-frame trucks, but then when you put it in things like this, it handles really nicely. So this thing has a multi-link rear suspension as well. So all of those things contribute to the handling that I'm experiencing. But yeah, it handles really, really well. It's very agile, drives very small for being such a large, minivan with so much space. I'm also getting 35 mpg combined out of this thing. And that's like true. Right now I'm looking at my speedometer, I'm at 32 mpg, and I've been doing a lot of idling. If I was driving this thing, I'd probably be over, 35. The fuel economy has been incredible. I've been driving it all week, and I still have a range of 450 miles left on my odometer. So this thing is like a road trip machine with that kind of mileage possibilities. So I love that. You don't have to stop a lot when you go on road trips. That's great. Here we are taking it through some turns. And honestly, it feels quick. Like, look, that battery, I mean, again, like I said, it's not a sports car, but you can chuck it into a turn. It holds. I don't feel unstable at all. It's far more stable than I ever would have imagined. What they're doing with vehicles these days is super impressive. But yeah, it's a very nice vehicle to drive, and it really does drive small. I gave it to my wife, and she didn't feel uncomfortable driving something this large at all. It's been a pretty good experience all around. I mentioned the blind spots before. The blind spots are something that you just have to get used to in a minivan. You have very large A-pillars, and then the rear pillars as well are pretty large. So you just got to keep an eye out for that. And then, I will say that the sound system in here has, when I first got it, I think I had to adjust some settings. I wasn't too impressed with it, but now I think it's actually pretty good. I got the sub working. I don't think the sub was turned on or something like that. And now it's pretty solid. It's the JBL system with a sub in the rear. If you're playing, good high quality music through like your wireless CarPlay, it sounds really, really good. So I would give them a +1 on the sound system. As far as noise in the cabin goes, I think the cabin is fairly quiet. I'm driving through town right now. I don't put a lot of noise suppression on my audio when I run this back, so you'll probably be able to hear my voice pretty clearly. It's very quiet in here. It's not the most quiet vehicle I've ever been in. It's not Lexus GX quiet, for example, but it is quieter than my wife's RAV4, probably quieter than my 4Runner, maybe. But it's good for a daily driver. I will say I've enjoyed driving it on the daily back and forth to daycare and to work and things like that, and to run errands. So it's been a complete joy to drive. Other things that I would note is it is a fully electronic steering rack. Again, most vehicles today are. You don't get a lot of feedback through the steering wheel. That's to be expected, but it does make them drive fairly small. There's that transition again from battery. I don't know if you heard it, from battery to the actual ICE motor. And I can't get over how smooth that transition is in this vehicle. Most vehicles, when there's a hybrid system, and my Toyota Tundra was like this, in most vehicles, that transition from the battery to the ICE is very abrupt, and you feel it quite a bit. This vehicle, I really have been extremely, pleasantly surprised by how smooth that transition has been. I think it's probably the best out of any Toyota product that I've felt on when it comes to that hybrid transition. And that's something that always bothers me in hybrids. So big kudos to Toyota on that one. The suspension, I think, is a sport suspension. This one is the XSE trim, but even this sportier suspension is very, very comfortable and compliant going over speed bumps. You know, it's pretty comfortable all around. So I do think that, you know, if you're cross-shopping a larger SUV and one of these minivans, I don't think that you're going to lose a ton to be desired when you're driving. I mean, I know there's some reviewers out there that say that you lose that drivability aspect in the minivan. It depends what SUV you're cross-shopping, obviously. If you're cross-shopping an X5, I mean, yeah, it's probably not going to handle quite that well, but frankly, you're probably not pushing your vehicle. The average person is not pushing their vehicle hard enough to even notice the difference in the way those things handle. You know, unless you're pushing tight turns in your local neighborhood, doing 60, 70 miles an hour, you're not going to really notice it. If you're doing 40, 50, even taking some turns fast, you're probably not going to notice it. These new platforms handle really, really well. So with that, let's get it back to the garage. I will share my final thoughts, but overall, I have no issues with drivability in this thing. It's been a complete joy to drive, and I think it would make a very, very nice minivan for someone if this is what you're buying it for. So let's get back and I'll give you my final thoughts on the Sienna. Well, I've said it once and I'll say it again. Minivans are cool, guys. If you don't believe that after watching today's video, I can't help you. And if you're looking for a minivan, this is 100% my top pick right now for minivans. I'm going to cross-test a couple other minivans, but personally, for me, minivans, the styling and the looks really are like one of the #1 things because they're all pretty great utility vehicles. And I think this one looks 100% the best. It'll probably retain the most value in the long term if you ever want to resell it. So those are things that I start to think about when I have something like a minivan. And this Toyota, hybrid system has proven itself to be reliable in many vehicles on Toyota's platform. Their 4-cylinder hybrid combos are typically really, really reliable. So that's something you want to think about when you're cross-shopping minivans to something like this Toyota Sienna. And I just love the way this thing looks. So overall, if you're looking for a utility vehicle, you've decided that, you know, the minivan makes sense for you, I would 1000% check one of these out. And at this $50,000 price tag on the XSE trim, I think that's probably a good place to start. The Platinum's going to kind of start to creep up a little bit there. But I would encourage you to go drive the minivan before you rule it out. You might like it more than you think. And, it's one of those vehicles that I think once you get integrated, once you integrate it into your fleet, maybe it's not your primary vehicle, maybe you have a couple of vehicles, but I think it's a great thing to have in the fleet if you have 2 vehicles or 3 vehicles in your household. So with that, if you guys like this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out to make more videos, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.